Hey guys, Dills here. Quickly before we get started, we typically like to play sound bites or clips from videos or call-ins that people have called in with before each episode. And when we have a big release like Varlamore, we like to play the trailer of it. Unfortunately, Jagex released one that didn't have any dialogue, but we still want to play it, so it'll have some like ambient music, I guess. And I'll do a little bit of commentary so you know what you try to picture it in your head, what the trailer is sharing. Okay, so we flying in the sky over clouds on a bird. He's diving into the bazaar. We see two men walking in short shorts, and we see their legs. It's zooming in on the legs. Slowing down, but still zooming in on the legs. Still frame of the legs. Okay, now we're flying over the Hunters Guild and zooms in on the calf. Those are nice calf muscles. Okay, now we're flying into the Perilous Moons. We're seeing the different bosses. Very cool. Zooming in on the thighs and the legs again. Still zooming, slowed down, but still zooming in on the legs. And it fade to black. There we go, guys. Varlamore for you. Let's get into the episode. Welcome to episode 243. I think, I'm pretty confident it's 243 of the Wilderness Podcast. I'm Dills. Join with me today, Trey. How's it going?
Hello.
So we've got a lot to talk about because we got a huge update. Varlamore released part 1 of Varlamore, which is this huge new area attached to Zaya, and with it came a shit ton of content. We're talking like 4 new quests. We got like all of these different skilling methods, some of them major, some of them minor, but they're all kind of cool. We got some new PVM activities, including a new like high, what are we calling it? High level PVM. This is stuff for the HLC boys out there. You one tickers, the people who are like specking and doing the crazy stuff and like flicking their prayers. This is like Inferno level content that we got. So that's kind of cool. Something we haven't seen in a while, but I guess Desert Treasure 2 brought a lot of that. Anyways, we're going to get into it because there's a lot going on there. And it's funny, this is take 2 of the podcast because Trey, we kind of did record our first impressions of the Varlamore content last weekend, but things went amiss. And here we are doing a pickup recording.
I did not record my mic. I'm not ashamed. I mean, it's a learning experience. If I look at my Audacity and I see a straight line the whole time, probably means that it's not picking up my mic. So
what really happening was like halfway through, you're like, oh my God, this is like the worst recording I've ever listened to. I'm just going to mute my microphone and save us all the embarrassment when this has to go live.
I'm so non-confrontational that I just deleted my audio instead of releasing a bad episode.
And this is like, to really double it up is we recorded another episode talking about all like your maxing, should other people max. We talked a lot about like the mindset of someone who wants to max in this game. We just haven't released it yet because I've been crazy busy at work. I feel like I say that all the time, but shit just really hit the fan. And then Varlamore dropped. So a couple of weeks went by. I hadn't edited that episode. We still have it. But then Varlamore came out and we're like, well, we can't wait 3 months to do a Varlamore episode. So let's put we'll put that one aside. We'll come back to it. We'll revisit it. But let's talk about Varlamore. And then, we lost the recording. So now here we are again to talk about Varlamore again. And hopefully we really nail some of the jokes from that last recording.
Oh, yeah.
It was a hoot.
I think I was legitimately screaming at one point about something. So hopefully I can get as worked up again.
Yeah, it was. There was some good knee slappers in there too. But anyways, all this to say, I don't know, Trey, anything you wanted to open the show up with today? Have you been having? How's your week been going? How's your month, I should say, been going?
Pretty terrible, honestly. But the less said about that, the better.
Okay. I feel like I need to follow up, but I don't.
No, I
don't know if I should.
The only real the only real world or application I can have for anybody is that if your work life or your home life is not going well, don't try to learn Inferno at the same time. Just put that on the back burner. If work has got you hating your life, don't come home and do the Inferno and hate your life even more. So
this is true.
that's the only advice I can really give right now. It doesn't feel good to be like, this is the only 2 hours I have that I'm going to enjoy my life, and then send hour and a half Inferno attempt and die with, and Inferno doesn't have any, there's no participation award. You get some tockle, but other than that, you just are upset. So yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've got back to my roots.
It's not a good time.
I'm hunting skilling pets now. So, I'm doing the things I enjoy in the game, but no, it's hopefully I can get to a healthier mindset so I can get back in there. Cause it was, I did start learning Inferno, and it's fun until it's not. Like, yep. In theory, it's so cool. Like the puzzle solving, obviously I've talked a lot about how much I love board games and puzzle games and stuff. And I really, when you view it as this like high stakes puzzle where, when the wave starts, these things are in different positions every time, and you have to, the puzzle is basically where you're going to stand and how you're going to attack these monsters and in what order, so that you're not, essentially what it boils down to is you're not taking hits from two different attack styles at the same time, and knowing how the mechanics of all these creatures work. So yeah, it's really interesting from that concept. But yeah, that when you mess up the puzzle slightly by 0.6 seconds, then you die and you go back to the beginning. So yeah, it's been definitely a learning experience. Probably getting better at the game, but yeah, definitely not something to do when work is making you generally just hate your life.
Yeah, it's true. It's like the Inferno is not for the faint of heart. It's like I think it's, you know what? People are gonna like disagree. Probably people are gonna get like rattled. I think, you know what? This is my hot take. I think it's okay if you bought your Inferno cape. I think that's okay because like not just that it's hard, but it is a commitment. It is a test of endurance because of how long it takes, and it's just like it's not. I don't know. I was trying to do it. It was fun. And as you said, until it wasn't. And I didn't feel like doing it anymore. And I knew I still had a long ways to go before I got it. So I was like, you know what? I don't really have the time or the desire to do this. And nowadays we have so much other content that you can test yourself on that when the Inferno came out, it was kind of like the only thing that's like, if you really want to test yourself as a PVMer, that's where you go. But now we got like hard mode tops. We got like really high invo levels of Toa with his challenge modes with Chambers of Zarek. We have the Awakened bosses on Desert Treasure 2. Now we have the Colosseum that came out. Like, there's just a lot to go through. I think it's okay that, and it's tough. Like I'm having the same experience with Bloodborne. I had been playing Bloodborne and I had so much fun. I stayed away from those types of games because of how hard they were and punishing and yada, yada, yada. But then I tried it just on a whim and I was blown away, and I really stuck with it for a little bit, and I was blown away by how much fun I was having, and it all clicked. I was like, I get why people love these types of games. But then I hit a boss that I just couldn't beat, and I spent like 2 evenings trying to kill it. Haven't been able to kill it, and I haven't played it since because I'm like, it's hard. I'm sure it's going to feel great if I beat it, but you know what doesn't feel great? Wasting another friggin' night trying to beat the boss. I don't want. That's what a wait. When it starts feeling like you wasted your night because you didn't get anywhere, that's where it's time to shelve it. I had that with League of Legends. I would come home from work, play 3 matches, lose them all, and I would be like, wow, I just didn't have fun. What a great evening. Can't wait for work tomorrow. What a great way to spend your Tuesday, And that's when I was like, I need to quit League of Legends because I'm not flipping a coin to see if I'm going to enjoy my evenings anymore. Anyways, so yeah, the Inferno kind of falls in that category where if work is stressful, you don't want to come home and play Bloodborne, a game that's also going to be a bit stressful. Or you're not going to want to come home and do the Inferno.
I would say a couple of responses to that is also, it's okay to rock your Fire Max cape and proudly. You know, it's the Inferno. The Infernal Cape is a lot more about flexing than it is about actual best of slot upgrade. Like, obviously, yes, it is a +4 strength bonus over the Fire Cape, but that's not why people do the Inferno.
No,
you can do every single piece of content in the game with the Fire Cape, and I literally started my Inferno grind because I was at the Prif Bank and some guy was like, nice Fire Max Cape. And I was like, well, at least it proves I didn't buy an Infernal Cape. And he was like, it's time, brother. And I was like, you think so? And he's like, yeah, you can do it. And so that was, for whatever reason, that random guy got me to do it. And and I'm not regretting any of it at all. But yeah, I think that's what really draws me to skilling. You know, what you're talking about is just knowing I'm going to get on, kind of knowing before I play the game what progress I'm going to get. And that progress is pretty like secured. You know, obviously people compare RuneScape to, you know, high level gambling in a lot of senses, or low level gambling, I guess it would be. But like, you know, PVM really is that. You know, I'm going to go run bandos for 2 hours and I might get absolutely nothing, or I might get absolutely spooned. And, you know, it's just the slot machines in a lot of ways. But skilling, I think that's honestly what draws me to it, is it's so much more consistent. You know, you just put your time in, get your XP. And as I've talked on this podcast about before, that's what draws me to those blue collar bosses like Muspa and Vorkath, because you really do have much more consistent GP, and you're not going to have those nights where you feel like your night was wasted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's skilling can be quite cozy. So that's good. Anything else you want to talk about before I got some things to share. I got
Go for it.
Okay, and I should mention, we're keeping this one a little bit more raw. Sometimes I get bogged down in the editing. That's why these podcasts take so long, and why the other episode we recorded hasn't come out. Me and Trey did some talking. We're like, you know what? Let's cut back on the editing. I say this, and I'm watching my audio spike up every time my kid's running around upstairs, and I'm like, oh boy, here we go. So I apologize if there's any noise, any background noise. Even though I don't think anyone will care, but just putting it out there anyways. But yeah, it's been an interesting week, and I say that because for a really long time now, I've been fighting this urge to get into this like hobby or this activity. And unfortunately, this week I finally succumbed to my urges, and I ended up purchasing a Warhammer 40K product. It's just something I've been trying to stay away from, but I think getting into Magic the Gathering was a bit of a gateway into these types of hobbies that can be very, very expensive. And I got into the Warhammer 40K hobby a few days ago, and I've been building minis, and it's been really fun, and I'm really looking forward to painting and stuff. And I've been trying to dive into the lore. And part of the reason why I want to talk about it is because like we had this new Varlamore update came out, and I'm like, you know, let's talk about some of the lore on the podcast. Let me go read up on it, learn about it, pay attention to what's going on in the quests. And I'm having the same problem with friggin' Warhammer 40K, and it's like, I find lore really interesting, but my God, is it ever boring to read? And like Bloodborne was like this too, because they make you read through item descriptions and stuff to learn about it. And half the time it's like, it's like reading a history textbook sometimes. Like they make it seem so official. And RuneScape, I had the same problem reading through the Zaya lore. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like these are like journal entries, and like, it's not very fun to read. It's not super interesting. And the worst part, I go on, this is a rant. This is turned into a rant. I go onto YouTube to learn about the lore, because I'm like, oh, let's go check out some of these lore people. And part of me is glad we had to re-record this episode, because last week when we were talking about Varlamore, I kept talking about Destiny 2, and I realized, I don't know why I keep talking about Destiny 2. I'm bringing it up now because I'm going to talk about Destiny 2. It's the same problem with friggin' Destiny 2. The lore, I tried to learn about it. You go onto YouTube, you find this YouTuber who does he's like known to be the lore YouTuber of Destiny 2. And then you're like, boom, here's the timeline of Destiny 2. Here's a timeline of Warhammer. You're like, great. It's like a 3-hour long fucking video. And then you listen to it and it reads like the person learned the lore and they read the lore and then they rewrote it as if it's like an audiobook. So then you're hearing this like really official reading of this stuff. And they make it seem like, well, Oryx went and grabbed the essence of the magical lily. I'm doing a terrible job of it, but they read it as if they're reading like a history book. And you're like, this is the same thing as reading the lore. This stuff's so friggin' boring and it's so long. And if I zone out for it, it's so dense with information. I need someone who can just like tell me what I need to know without, anyways. It's fun though. I'm really excited to get into Warhammer 40K. It seems like such a dad hobby now that I'm doing it. It feels like I'm like building ships and like building airplanes, like those like model. I'm doing the same thing, but with these like crazy post-apocalyptic monsters and stuff. It's really cool. Do you ever dabble into anything like that, Trey? Like Warhammer or any of the like miniature building?
No, I mean, I've dabbled in everything like tangential to that. You know, I'm big into D&D, big into board games and stuff, which I know Warhammer is kind of the middle ground between those two things in a lot of ways. But no, I want to go on record saying that this is a bad idea for you.
I know.
And the same reason I give for myself of like, oh man, this is it's expensive and it's extremely time. Like I think that the thing about Warhammer and D&D for a lot of people is it's more than a game. You know, it's like 5 different hobbies all mixed into one. You know, it's the same like when people talk about getting a 3D printer, it's the same thing where it's like, oh no, that's not like a thing you buy. That's like a whole new hobby. So people who buy 3D printers and want to like make like miniatures and then paint them. And yeah, it's something that I have avoided just for the sake of not having another hobby that I will collect dust similar to my guitars or a lot of other things. But no, I would love to play it though. You know, I'll let you do all the work and then I'll meet up with you sometime and we'll play it and I can benefit from all your hard work. But yeah, I mean, as far as responding to like the lore thing, I think it really boils down to like the format of it. Cause like, if you think about like, if you read the lore of Game of Thrones, which would basically be like the Cliff Notes, it would be like, this king who'd reigned for this long, there was a plot to assassinate and these people assassinated him and it would be just as boring. So I think like, no matter how interesting the lore is, it's always going to feel like you're reading Cliff Notes of something interesting. And I think that for like Varlamore or for 40K or for any of those things, like, yeah, if you're experiencing it real time as a story, I mean, a great example of that, speaking of Game of Thrones, is they're doing House of the Dragon, which is a prequel to Game of Thrones, but it's an existing lore book that I own and have never read, which is that exact same thing. It's all these, these histories of this one family in Game of Thrones, and they're releasing it as a, TV show and showing you those things in real time. And it's way more interesting that way.
Yeah, I guess it really comes down to it's like there's no story. Like lore isn't a story. You're not hearing. I mean, it kind of is, but not really. You're not hearing.
I think it's just
much
because
except for
I think it's you're just not experiencing it in real time like you do with a good story. You don't have that moment where you're like it. You're not gasping when there's just a single sentence that says, "Oh, and they assassinated the king," as opposed to like when you're inside the story and somebody pops up behind the king and stabs him in the back, and you're just like. You don't have that like emotional investment or anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. It's yeah. So if you guys know of any good lore YouTubers for RuneScape, let me know. I feel like we're lacking in that category for this game. We need a lore daddy. That's what we need.
I think the best solution to this is going to be in the next. I say like 5 years, but probably in the next week or something, when we can just take that entire block of text and lore and put it on some AI thing and say, make this into a movie for me. And it'll just have like a full like high budget production movie that it'll just pop out for you in 10 seconds and you can watch it all play out dramatically.
Oh yeah. Shout out to AI. Yeah, it's crazy. I got another piece of news I wanted to mention. I don't know if you saw this, but Andrew Gower, our like the daddy of RuneScape, The Gower brothers are the responsible for making RuneScape, and they eventually left the company. They're coming out with a new game. Have you seen this? Brighter Shores?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I watched the trailer for it.
It looks just like RuneScape, but with like, it looks like old school RuneScape with nicer graphics. Sort of.
Yeah, no, it looks like RuneScape 3 graphics with more of the old school RuneScape like kind of gameplay.
Oh, that's interesting you say that, because I watched this and I'm like, this looks like what I would want old school RuneScape to look like. The graphics are nice and smooth, but they look very updated, but they all are very simple too. It looks pretty cool. They've really leaned into the grid battle map system. So like when you're walking around a room, you can the tiles are right there. You can see them so easily. And they've even mentioned, there's been some mixed opinions about this in the, not just the RuneScape world. I'm talking about the MMORPG world entirely. There's some mixed feelings because they're going to automate a lot of the skilling aspects. This is going to be very similar to RuneScape, which isn't surprising when you see the success of it. But there's going to be like there's going to be skilling. There's going to be gathering things to level up and getting resources to gather. But they said they're going to automate it as well. So like, I'm guessing you could woodcut, and if you stepped away from your computer, you would keep woodcutting for like another 6 hours, but maybe you would get 10% of the resources. It's probably going to be something like that. But it looks cool. It definitely looks interesting. It's called Brighter Shores. It's on Steam if you want to go check it out. Releasing Q3, so it should be releasing in the next couple of months.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you were going to step back and say, okay, if we had no concept of RuneScape or old school RuneScape, and we were going to start from the beginning, it seems like what they're doing with this is a lot of those concepts. I mean, the only reason that we push for, moderate XP rate increases and not, basically the whole Easyscape conversation. The only reason that we push back against Easyscape is because we have this these feelings attached to these achievements and things. And I think if it was that way from the beginning where skilling was automated, I think we would all prefer that. But we fight against that because it feels like it's changing the game we know and love. So if they start from the beginning with it like that, then I think that a lot of people would be on board for that.
Totally. Yeah. We want to feel good about these achievements. And if I could just turn on like, oh, I'm going to thieve for the next 6 hours, I'll get really reduced rates, but it's like, whatever, I'll still get 99 eventually. Like, why do I care about speed leveling thieving? It's not like level 98 unlocks anything significant. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And it's I'm curious to see how close to RuneScape it's going to be. I'm sure it's going to be quite close.
Well, more automated
last
thieving.
thing.
Oh, go ahead.
No. Well, okay, I was going to say, I got one last thing before we talk about Varlamore.
Go ahead.
So every now and then, Trey, you kind of have I want to say a background. I don't know if I'm overhyping, but you have like this you have some experience or some connection when it comes to like giving people life advice in one way or another. And I came across some potential life advice that was tied into old school RuneScape, and figured I'd like to see what your take was. So this was actually shared on the old school RuneScape subreddit, but it comes from another subreddit. It comes from Am I the Asshole, which is like these people. It's these people who are like posting for validation. They're like, hey, like my boyfriend set my house on fire. Am I an asshole for being upset with him? Like that's usually what you get from those type of posts. But this one was all about old school RuneScape. So let me read it. This is from the perspective of the girlfriend or wife. So the title says, am I the asshole for offering sex and then rejecting it because my boyfriend wanted to finish his game first? That's the title.
Oof.
So she says, so me and my boyfriend have been together since we were 20 for 7 years now. The sex has become less frequent, and that mostly has to do with my own sex drive becoming less and less. Lately, we've been talking about this a lot because it's starting to really frustrate him. The sex was down to about once a month at some points. We talked about it, and he explained that he only wants to have sex with me if I also want it 100%. But this just doesn't happen very often. So we made an agreement that if I was not 100%, but I was not in the mood, I would try to make more of an effort. So she's like 75%. She's going to try to push up that 25% that's needed. She continues to say, yesterday I was driving home from work and I had the mindset to surprise him. So after dinner, I left the living room, got all dressed up. He rather likes lingerie, so I put on some stockings, high heels, miniskirt, corset. I also put on some nice makeup and was super excited that I was about to make him very happy. When I walked into the living room, he looked very happy and excited when he saw me, but he explained that he just started a raid with his clanmates on RuneScape. I don't know exact name of the raid, but he likes to call this the one with the difficult spider lady. This is Theater of Blood we're talking about. This isn't no run-of-the-mill raid. This is Theater of Blood we're talking about. So she continues. So he calls it this difficult spider lady raid for me, so I understand which one it is. He says that he doesn't want to ruin the raid for his raid members and told me it's going to take about 10 to 15 minutes. I walked into the bedroom alone and a little sad because he chose the game over me, especially when I put all this effort to make such a nice evening and cater his needs. Long story short, I got cold and upset and crawled into bed. When he wanted to join me 20 minutes later, I wasn't in the mood anymore, and I told him that he lost his shot for the night. I feel like I ruined his night when I was trying to make it better. Am I the asshole? Trey, what would you say? She's coming to you. Am I the asshole here?
I would say absolutely not. No, I I relate a lot to this story, not like specifically that, not specifically like sexual, but like, shout out to any of my friends in the clan who I've avoided raids. And this is a big reason why I don't raid, because I swear the second I hop in Discord and VC and my wife is like, dinner's ready, or like, hey, do you want to go do this or that? I hate those longer term commitments. It's why I avoid group content for a lot of reasons. But yeah, I mean, it's just Theater of Blood. Like this is sex we're talking about here. This is, this is like the thing we're genetically designed to want the most. And I think in that case, in my experience with fellow men, if you tell them I didn't do blank because I was getting laid, they're all going to like high five you. I remember I had a boss tell me one time we were working at a job site that was very near my house, and I was going home for lunch, and my wife was working second shift at the weekend. So it was this really cool, like 3 months or so where I was actually like getting to have lunch with my wife. And my job foreman said, if you're ever late from lunch because you're getting laid, that's totally fine. And so, yeah, I think you log out with no explanation. Maybe type 416 to them. That's the free for all world. They can find somebody, and then you come back later, explain it, and they're probably all going to be like, nice, like hell yeah. But yeah, I completely understand where this person's coming from, and I will say I think that the lead up to it sounded very healthy about the communication about, they say that, those are the two causes for divorce is money and sex. And so I think communicating about that before it becomes a bigger issue is very healthy. But yeah, I think they need to have a further conversation about like, hey, do you understand how bad it makes me feel that you're choosing a video game? And from the guy's perspective, I totally understand, like, I'm letting my friends down. Like that's what it really boils down to. It's not about the game when you really dig into these issues. This is an interpersonal thing. Like I am letting my friends down for my wife, which is already something that's really has a lot of problematic mindsets baked into it. The whole, like, oh, you're picking your wife over your boys. And the answer to that is always, hell yeah, I am. Get over it. But I think that, yeah, they need to have, I think if you can empathize with how that would make someone feel, then you probably would never do that again. And, at the end of the day, it was going to be a white chest anyway. There's
a sex joke there, by the way.
Yes, of course. Anyways. Oh no, that's not going to get edited out now. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, I think that, it's just Tob. there's plenty of opportunities for that, for something that's so rare, and sounds like, since they've been talking about it, so important that you get on that kind of schedule. But yeah, I think I would totally in the woman's favor on this one. And a little side advice I heard that I've been really trying to implement. I thought this was really interesting. I saw this TikTok that I think it's a really interesting idea. They were saying, basically, when you're having a date night, right? Their advice was to have sex before you go out, so that you don't. Because generally, what happens is you know, like a date night, you go out, you have, you know, maybe some activity, a movie or whatever. You have dinner, some alcohol, and it's like the kind of the crowning achievement of the night, you know, is you have sex at the end and go to bed. And generally, what happens is you're tired from alcohol and from, you know, whatever activity you guys have been doing, and the food, you're full, and you just don't feel in the mood very much. But there's that pressure, and there's that expectation at the end of the night that this is going to happen. And so their advice was to just, you know, do it beforehand, and then go out, and there's no pressure, there's no expectation, and you can just have a relaxing good night together.
Now, yeah, that's not bad. That is not a bad. But then, what's the point of the date, right? That's what I'm saying. No, I'm just joking. That's not what I'm saying. So this was posted. This post here was posted on the "Am I the Asshole" subreddit. What do you think the comments were like? What advice do you think they were getting from other people in the comments? Do you think they were agreeing with you?
I would assume, since it's Reddit, the answer was woman wrong, woman bad.
Do you think that would be the same? Okay, so that's "Am I the Asshole"? Do you think that the comments would be the same on the 2007 RuneScape subreddit?
I mean, I'm assuming the RuneScape Reddit was probably more jokey. I would be very interested to know what the actual serious responses were. And if I had seen that, I probably would have commented and said, "All that for a white chest." Or you know, with your joke in mind, I might have said you traded one white chest for a different one.
That's a good one.
But what was the response?
So it's funny. The 2007 subreddit, a lot of the comments were like, "That's how you lose a girlfriend.
Oh, okay.
This is why so many RuneScapers can't get laid." Kind of taking the girls' side on it.
That's good.
But when you go to the other "Am I the Asshole" Reddit, a lot of comments are on the guy's side, saying, here's one of the comments I'm looking at right now. "Here's the thing non-gamers don't get about online groups. He's not choosing the game over you, but he has already committed to multiple other people. By canceling, that means you're wasting 3+ other people's time versus 1. So a lot of people are saying that, like, just because a girl has an expectation, they're expecting something, does not mean to drop everything. Not when I say girl, I mean just in this situation, but of course it could be whatever. But it's not like the expectation to drop everything and then do, because it's sex and guys like sex, is actually a little bit off base. And it's funny. I had dated this woman before my wife now, and that was her perception of things. If she wanted to, the guy should drop everything and be like, yes. And she wanted to a lot. Like too much, to be honest. Which, Trey, that probably sounds crazy to say. Your boss would probably fire me if I told him that. But it was a lot.
Yeah,
like,
no,
I remember one time I was sick with the flu, and we got into a fight because I was like, I can't, I'm sick. And she's like, are you kidding? You're rejecting me right now. But this was, anyways, that was a little bit of a different experience. There were some things she had to work through there. So, yeah. Anyways, great advice though. I think there's so many different angles to look at it. I do think it's a bit of a complicated issue. I've seen a few times about this, and there's things where you're like, everyone's experiences are going to come into play at this. Trey, you're giving your advice, and I'm sitting there being like, well, I've been kind of in that situation, almost like the opposite, where like I would feel the opposite. I'd be like, no, like if I'm in the middle of something, if I'm, same thing with like D&D, like I'm not going to just like stop playing D&D to go, do the dirty just because. But
just do it in game.
Oh, yeah. Then that's why you guys stay out of those RP worlds. Things get crazy over there. Trey, we have a lot to talk about today. So why don't we just head on over to the news and talk about Varlamore stuff?
Hell yeah.
Awesome. Okay, we're back. We have a ton of Varlamore content to go through. This was a huge expansion. I know we talked about at the beginning, but there was like, 4 quests or something that got released. We got multiple different skilling activities. We got at least one skilling activity would be considered a major update. And then we got a couple minor updates that are still improving skilling. And then we got these 2 massive PVM pieces of content. We have the Colosseum, and then we have the Moons of Peril, which is this like, it's like a Barrows 2.0. Although I don't even think that's fair to say, because Peril Moon is like this, its own thing. It's got a lot of cool stuff going on there. But I don't know. I guess we can tee it off like we did with the Lost Recording. First impressions. The first time you really get to, get the hints of like, we're going to Varlamore was with the Children of the Sun quests. This is when you get to meet, I think it's the prince. You get to meet some of these royalty figures. Actually, maybe let's back up. Should we talk about the lore a little bit? I think we should.
Whatever you got.
Okay, we're going to rewind a little bit. Because I did want to talk a little bit about the lore, but I found connecting to my rant earlier, I just find it like kind of dull. And it's also sometimes kind of hard to find questions. I was reading about, so Varlamore is the city that they closed their borders for like however long they did it. It's mentioned in the quest, but I don't remember now. And honestly, I can't even remember why they closed their doors. I was looking around on Wiki and trying to and on Google and Reddit trying to find the answer. Couldn't find it, even though I know it's super obvious, but I couldn't find it. I read through a bunch of the lore pages, and they're so dense with stuff that I just like didn't have time. I'm looking for one piece of information. I just couldn't spend 40 minutes reading an entire Wikipedia page for one thing. So I Control F and I'm looking around. But Varlamore was the city where they closed the borders. And it's right connected to Kurend. And Varlamore was settled due to all these problems that were going on in Kurend. Zaya is like made up of these 5 houses, but it's been going through civil war for like hundreds of years, and with different prominent figures in each of the houses who are being selected as the new king of Kurend for a period of time. But they went through a whole lot of struggles. Hesidius House was always known for like supplying all of Kurend with its food. But if you go back and read the lore, it is kind of interesting when you get to these parts. But Hesidius House got like hit with a bunch of like plagues and stuff where like they just couldn't produce enough food for everyone. And people started dying, and it caused all these sort of problems. Sometime in the history of Zaya, you have this guy named Zarek who just like shows up, and he rallies his forces and becomes like this new like tyrannical king of Zaya. He gets corrupted because he's like obsessed with these like power crystals or something. And that's where like Chambers of Zarek, he's looking for the crystals, and the Dark Altar by the Arceus House is like also providing all this energy of like immortality and stuff. Anyways, the dude's losing it, but people are like, yo, this dude needs to chill because he's kind of insane. And he's like, people are dying because of him, and he just has no care. He's just obsessed with these crystals or something. He's like one of those people that like stumbles across energy crystals, and they think it like, they watch, what was that movie where people watched it and it was kind of like religious, but it was all about like manifesting stuff. Like you think, oh, I'm going to edit this podcast, and then it just happens. What's it called? Oh,
I'm not sure.
It's kind of like a snake oily type of video. But I remember when I was younger, people would watch it and they would be like, "You have to watch this," and it was just like, it was like some snake oil stuff. I remember that's what I was thinking. Anywho, why did I bring that up? Doesn't matter. Zarek was going crazy though. And then people were like, yo, fuck this. Let's get the hell out of here. Let's go somewhere else. Well, you know what? We're going to make our own kingdom, and it's going to be cooler than your kingdom, and you suck. So we're going to leave. A bunch of these people head south, and they stumble across all these different ruins, and they're like, whoa, this shit's kind of wild. But then they just settle on Varlamore, and they're like, yeah, we're going to be our own kingdom. And the people, it's like Zaya is like completely disconnected from Gielinor, like the whole entire continent of Zaya. They've got like their whole thing going on. They don't care about the gods of Zaya, of Gielinor at all. Nobody there really worships like Saradomin or Zamrock or any of those gods. And at Varlamore especially, they worship like the sun and the moon, and they call it Ralos and Renal, which is just lunar and solar backwards. So yeah, that's what they worship. But they also have this like connection to these beings. They call it the Old Ones, which is sort of like the Tazar, because they also like know about these elder gods, which were like the first things that were in the world. So these Old Ones were around before humans were, and they just built all of these like these pyramids and all these structures, and they had all these cities going on there, and they had like this power of mortality, although somebody screwed up and then he got everybody sick with this plague, which is where that Stranglethorn or Stranglehold, Vardorvis, that dude with the zombie from Desert Treasure 2, that's how that happened. But all those like pyramids you see where the shamans are at, those are all built by these Old Ones. So it's like this ancient race that got extinct during the Third Age because the God Wars just kind of accidentally stumbled into Zaya because one of the Zamrock people were like, I'm going to go check out Zaya for something. I can't remember. It's Skatizo, by the way. That was the Zamrock dude. Yeah, and then so you have this city now, which was like kind of locked themselves off from the rest of the world because they said like everybody sucks. Let's just stay the hell away from them. And now they're finally opening things up, but they've just been self-contained at the bottom of this like peninsula. So yeah, we got a lot of cool stuff going on there. They have this other cult that like believes in Renal and Ralos, but they have like, you learn this in a quest too. So minor spoilers, but they're like, oh, there's these cycles where everything dies, but then everything gets reborn and rebuilt, and it's better than it was before. And they kind of look at the Old Ones a little bit like that. Like, hey, they died. They have these pyramids, which are kind of cool, but like, I mean, our shit's way better. So they're trying to push for the next cycle to begin where everyone's going to go extinct so that they can be reborn as something more superior and better. That's this like Twilight cult people. You'll stumble across them at some point. But I think did I get the Cliff Notes? I hope I'm getting the Cliff Notes because there is a lot there, especially when you look at Zaya. It's as a whole, they really were like Game of Thrones was hot at the time, and they were like, let's do Game of Thrones, but on RuneScape. And part of the reason why I wanted to bring up Warhammer 40K as well is because in Warhammer 40K, they have this like big period called the Age of Strife where everything started to go downhill, and then it kind of just caused shit to go down. Zaya's the same thing. They have this big period they call the Age of Strife. So I don't know if someone who was writing it was a big Warhammer junkie and they're like, oh, I like this, I'm going to take it. But yeah, Zaya had it as well. And Zaya was very much Game of Thronesy. The 5 houses were constantly like fighting for power and like doing all this weird stuff. And then you had these Arceus. Anyways, doesn't matter. But a lot of cool stuff going on there. Trey, are you big into the lore of RuneScape in general?
No, not generally. I was trying to do my best, my professional duty to pay attention, but it's hard. Lore is it's so easy to just kind of space out. But it is crazy. I mean, because when you do kind of tune back in mentally, it's like, oh, and then yeah, there's all this crazy stuff happening. It is interesting. It's just I really think it comes down to the format of it. I mean, in the quest, when they were talking about how there's this cult that, basically the type of cult that wants to bring about apocalypse and like end of humanity for their god. I mean, I thought that was super interesting, and I can definitely see that having a lot of potential for future quests, and that kind of stuff is interesting, and I'm excited to see where that goes.
Yeah, my problem is always like, there's just so much to keep track of, and they'll like make a note, be like, well, Johnny Gold Buckets found this treasure and I hope he's starting a business with it. And you're like, oh, that's cool. But then like, you're supposed to connect the dots from like other things. You're like, oh, that treasure was this ancient weapon technology from the Old Ones that he's been able to ascend himself into godhood for. Oh, and then so it's kind of like, it's supposed to like trigger all these different things when you learn something, but like I forget all the time. and don't recall. And I'm like, oh, whatever. And then someone else has to tell me, this is why it's cool. And then I'm like, oh, that is really cool. That's really neat. Yeah. Anywho, if anyone has more to add to the lore, please let me know, because I do love hearing about it. I love talking about it with other people, and I love when somebody tells me about it, but I don't want someone to read a novel at me. I don't want to read a Wikipedia page of it, because it's just friggin' a lot. But yeah, we kind of get intro to the area of Varlamore through these quests, starting at the Children of the Suns, which leads to this Twilight Promises quest, which is what you need to do in Varrock in order to take these Quetzals, this bird transportation system that flies you to Varlamore. They fly on these very pretty birds, which are really cool, by the way. I was hoping we would get a cutscene kind of like canoeing, but you don't. But anyways, whatever. And then you fly into Varlamore. Do you remember what your first impressions were? You're doing Twilight Promises. You land onto Varlamore. You're exploring the city. Do you remember how you thought or felt, or any like first impressions?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really that internal battle of you want to be like, ooh, a piece of candy and just run around and enjoy it. And then you have that constant efficiency, grindy part of your brain that's just like, all right, where do I go first to make the most money? Where can I get in early for, I did go straight to the Coliseum just to be like, all right, let me see if I can pop in here real quick and get some super inflated item. But yeah, if you can actually, I mean, this is general life advice too. If you can slow down and just take in the details and just enjoy the work that's been put into it and the artistry there's so much, and you can tell that there was a lot of care put into all the small details of the world, and it does feel so much more fleshed out than like Zaya on release, for example.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like, one of my favorite things to do is just explore the small details. Like, don't look at any guides, explore on my own, come up with my own assumptions about things. And you see these like really cool, I don't know, you stumble across things. Why is this building here? Oh, it has a ladder. What's upstairs? Nothing. There's nothing ever upstairs, but it's nice. You can check. And there's like this awesome thing that they did with the city design. It's not that it's awesome, but it's like somebody was paying attention. Somebody cared. You have your city and it's walled off, but on the outskirts of the city walls is all the farmland. So you have your farms right outside of the city, which like, that makes total sense. The food isn't crazy far away. I don't know how, like Falador, where do they get their food? Remington? That's like a whole city over. I know we can like walk to it in like a couple minutes, but there's a few RuneScape novels out, and it's been mentioned before, where it's like this, like what, scaled down theory, or you know what, I'm gonna have to find the JMods mentioning it. I was trying to find it before the podcast, but I couldn't. But they basically said that like everything's just been scaled down to like the necessities. But if you really wanted to immerse yourself in the world, you can pretend that everything is insanely bigger. So like you look at Varrock, and while the slums might only consist of like 5 buildings, since Varrock only has 30 buildings anyways, that's like a pretty big percentage. And all that's just trying to tell you is that Varrock has a huge like poverty area. There's like the slums are a really big part of Varrock. And that's what it's trying to communicate to you. And when you read the novels, there's like this 3-novel series. One of the things they mentioned near the beginning of the first novel is that they need to ride from Falador because they find this ring of life. And they're like, we have to figure out what they find this ring, and it saves somebody's life, and they don't know what it is. And they're like all spooked out. So they're like, they send this envoy. They sent a group of people from Falador to Taverley to go talk to one of the druids who might know. And it takes them like 2 days or so to walk from Falador to Taverley. So it's like the scale of things is really, so if you can think about Falador to Taverley being 2 days, you can kind of stretch that to like each other area maybe. So that's what I'm saying. A lot of the cities in Gielinor, you're like, gosh, like there's no farms around Falador. That's kind of strange. I guess they got some cows and stuff, but like still. But whereas, yeah, when you look at Varlamore, you see a shit ton of farms right on the outside. So little details like that, I really like.
Yeah, I feel like I should mention in the first recording, this blew my mind. And I've been thinking about it ever since the first recording, this thing you're talking about, this scaled down
the lost
theory.
recording, the lost notes.
Yes, the lost notes. But I think that's so, I love that. I love that so much because one of the biggest problems we've had in the past like 10 years of video games is this concept of open world. And I think a lot of games have tried to take that very literally to where it does feel like an open world. And it's like, oh yeah, these cities would have to be miles apart. And so then you're just stuck traveling miles between these cities. And I love the concept of this is this huge world, but we're going to compress it all. So all the fun stuff is really close together. And I love that. Like, thinking about Falador just because it's white as like actually the size of like Minas Tirith in Lord of the Rings. But honestly, it expands the world so much in my mind. I think that's such a cool concept.
And you can draw all these other conclusions where you're like, well, Falador, you have your guards, but they also have like this white knight, like this giant castle, and they have like a bunch of white knights. So it's like a very militarized city compared to Varrock, which Varrock doesn't really have a military that we know of. It's got a lot of guards, a city watch and stuff, but like who are they sending for like external affairs? Whereas Falador, you're like, oh, it's the white knights that'll go take care of this shit. Mm-hmm. Anyways, yeah, stuff like that's kind of cool. So yeah, we learn about the city from the Twilight Promises quest. It's you're helping this like royal family basically figure out who these assassins are. There's gonna be a little bit of spoilers here because I would love to rant about this quest because there's a few plot holes I found. Or these weird pacing things with the plot that I was like, well, I was really into it, but that's kind of fucking stupid. So spoilers. I'm sorry. You can fast forward like 2 minutes. You're helping this prince because somebody was trying to assassinate them. You learn this in the Children of the Sun's quest, I'm pretty sure. And you get an idea of who this gang of assassins are, but you don't know who is giving them the command, who is giving them the orders. So when you're about to question them, they just get killed. So you have this royalty group of Varlamore, this family and this council that runs the city. And then you have these two other figures who are like the twins. I forget what their names are, but they're these two twins who are always together. And they're very close to the new family. One of the twins was responsible for killing the assassin before being questioned. And your guy's all like, well, that's a little strange. Shouldn't we have some red flags? And the prince is like, no. We can trust the twins wholeheartedly. They would never betray me. They would die for me. I believe this to be so. And then you're like, cool, what's the history of these two twins? And they go, well, so my family just came into rule of the city, 10 years ago. And before that, it was the twins' father. They're not really related. This doesn't really matter. But by the way, the twins that are really close to us, they used to be the ruling family for hundreds of years beforehand. But his dad got a little crazy and he maybe drank a little bit too much and he was a little bit of an angry drunk. So he went crazy. So we killed him and now we took over. And they love us though, and they're helping us. So they're definitely not trying to overthrow us. That's for sure. That would never happen. And you're just like, what? Literally, he's pushing back every time he's saying it's them. And then he just, by the way, their dad used to be the king. Not a big deal or anything. It's like, all right. Okay, whatever. And then later on, you're like, okay, this cult is kind of behind these events. This cult is involved somehow. And Trey, we were both mentioning how this cult that wants to start this apocalyptic event, they're kind of behind this somehow. So we have to go to this Ralos's Rising, this mountain retreat area where we have this base camp set up. And we're going to go there with all of our people because we'll be safer there. And we can keep it better. We'll make sure we have all the guards on watch. We're really going to make sure the person is safe. It's not the prince they're trying to assassinate. It's this religious figure that's tied to the ruling of the city. Anyways, so they go to but you're like, oh, okay, where's the cult? And they're like, oh, the cult is kind of near the mountain, but not really, but they're kind of over there. So they're a little bit closer now when we're hiding there. And you're like, okay, cool. Yeah, no problem. And you guys are pretty sure the cult's behind this. Like, yeah, we're pretty sure the cult's behind this. And you're like, okay, great. And you got a lot of guards available. And they're like, yeah. We got so many guards. No one, she's never going to be out of our sight. And you're like, okay, cool. And then you go there and then someone's like, oh my God, the cult knows we're here and they're coming to attack. And you're like, what? So then you're like, you run in to make sure the girl's okay. And then, oh my gosh, she's been killed. Wow. She's been killed by the cult. And you're like, oh my God, like we never expected them to show up. And it's like, what? What do you mean? You know that they're trying to find you. Either it's an inside job, which has to be it, because there's no way a guard went out for a smoke while there's like cultists all over the place. Anyways, I must have misread something, but I was like, how did we end up in this situation? You guys are how are you ruling this kingdom? You guys are dumb. You're like, oh, you're so easily assassinable. Is that a word? I think it's a word. You're so easily assassinated. Like, gosh. Anyways, that's the first quest you get introed on. Am I off base, Trey? Am I missing? Did you spacebar through it, or do you have any missing links that I missed?
No, I mean, first off, I think we should start a side podcast where you describe popular books and movies, just going off about the story. I like the way you described all these, but I think that I guess it seems like your character is kind of calling these things out. Like you said, like your character is like, well, obviously these twins would have an incentive to want to assassinate them. Like, why are you trusting them? So it is, I wouldn't necessarily, I did notice those things, and I felt like that was intentional, of not necessarily a plot hole. I think it would be a plot hole if your character said, oh yeah, that makes sense. But the fact that your character, as the stand-in for you as a person, is also calling a lot of these things out as they're happening, makes it feel more intentional, and it's kind of leading somewhere as opposed to just bad writing. Yeah,
true. I guess like we don't know the full story. There's more to this that's going to happen. My whole thing is like, this has to be an inside job. Is it though? I don't know. And the whole twins thing where you're like, oh, I think the twins might be sketchy. They're like, no. And you guys like, oh, okay. And they're like, oh, let me tell you the story of like how we kind of dethroned their dad, by the way. And you're like, oh, come on. Guys are in power.
It does feel like, I know I've learned through years of DMing in D&D to, when I have like political plots and kind of lore heavy plot twists, to make it extremely obvious so that people, I realize that if you try to make it as in-depth as a Game of Thrones, then they're not going to pick up on any of it. They're not going to know what's going on. But if you make it like, this guy seems extremely suspicious because he is, then the people will pick up on that and maybe actually have a chance of following the story. So maybe they're just trying to dumb things down. So as you're space barring and you're catching one word every line of text, that you'll still know what's going on.
Right. It's like how they scale down the world. They're scaling down the context.
Just imagine for every line of chat, there's a much more in-depth conversation that is being scaled down. I like that theory.
Okay, cool. So we have that. We have context scaled down theory, or whatever you want to call it. Interesting. We probably got a lot of scaled down theories in this game. We'll have to keep an eye out for them. So yeah, we got that quest, which intros you, but there's so much more to be happening. And then we also got, I guess before we go to the other quests, we're hopping around a lot, but there's a really lot to talk about. Let's zoom back to the city of Varlamore, Civitas Fortis. Did I get that right?
Civitas Illa Fortis.
Civitas. Varlamore City of Varlamore. We got the Colosseum. Let's talk about the Colosseum. One of the keystone updates for this. Everyone was looking really forward to this because it's this new, really hard PVM content. And, when you're watching, a lot of us don't do this hardcore PVM stuff, but that doesn't mean we're not interested in it. A lot of us do watch, streamers and YouTubers, and it's really hype to watch people kind of gun for it. And we saw that when this update came out, with all the streamers trying to be the one that to beat it, this world first. And it took them like 2 days. So it was actually quite difficult. But what exactly is the Colosseum. It's they said it's like kind of similar to the Inferno, but instead of it being like a 3-hour grind, they're going to make it like 30, 40 minutes or so, like much less. So instead of there being like 70 waves, there's only 12 waves in this. And they really just made it a skill check for the most part, not endurance related. Now, my first complaint with this piece of content was it is so much more similar to the Inferno than I was expecting. When they mentioned that it's going to be like kind of like the Inferno, but I thought like not really. But it ends up being, to me, someone who is not an Inferno doer, even though I've done it a couple times, not completed it. But when I'm looking at the Colosseum, I'm like, this is a reskinned Inferno to me. Now, I've seen people who are deep into the Inferno. They're like, it's nothing like the Inferno. So I guess once you're getting into some of the differences and the flow of things and the format, things change a little bit. But from an outside perspective, you've got your 4 totems or these 4 pillars in the middle of the room, just like Inferno. You have them in the Colosseum, which I don't know if it's like one of those Colosseums that has like a roof that can cover it when it's raining and stuff. But like, what are these pillars holding up? I don't know, but they're there. Although now we're going back to the lost recordings. When I brought this up, Trey, you mentioned maybe it's like Star Wars Episode 2, the Clone Wars, where they're in the Colosseum and they're chained up to these giant pillars in the middle of the room. So maybe it is something they do.
Just some good old prisoner pillars, everybody's got to have one.
Yeah, let's build these massive pillars that we can just tie people to them or something. Like, anyways.
100-foot tall pillars so we can put a 6-foot person chained to it.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, made of marble and very expensive. And then at the same time, every wave you have like this major ranger and Melior comes out and they chase you around to try to attack you. Kind of reminds me the Nibblers and the Blobs kind of put together from the Inferno. These 2 monsters that spawn and they pop up, I believe, every round. And then you start getting like different waves of people and they swap out NPCs here and there. And that keeps happening until the final boss. So to me, it seemed closer to the Inferno than what I was expecting, but it is what it is. And then we had the streamers who were kind of going for their world first, and it took them about 2 days to actually complete it. That was really cool. We haven't seen a race like that since, I'm guessing, Theater of Blood. Theater of Blood might have been the last time we got some PVM update, and there was this huge race to see who can complete it first. We never really got that with the Awakened bosses because I think it just put some people at a disadvantage because you had to grind or buy these orbs in order to do these Awakened bosses. So I don't think people were following it as much. And plus you had to do the quest first and all this other stuff. But the Colosseum, you did have this race. People were just grinding it nonstop. I remember tuning into Noob Type, this really great PVMer, and this was the second day, and he had been streaming for like 27 hours straight trying to be the first one to complete it. Wow.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I listened to AddyCon and Molgoat Kirby were on the Sebe cast, and I listened to that episode. And something kind of what they were talking about that's so interesting is because the difference between something that they were able to get their first completion within 12 hours versus 24 hours is there's that huge separation of getting tired enough that you have to physically sleep, but wanting to be the first one to do it. And that really, really adds a lot to it. Just adding even like just hitting that threshold where you physically can't have enough focus. And obviously this is something that you've never done before. I mean, this is like the peak of, these are the greatest people in the game that are struggling with this. So you're having to be at the absolute top of your game and hitting that point where you have to sleep. And I think that the first completion happened when a lot of the other people were asleep. And so it probably doubled down in their mind, like, man, if I could have just had one more Red Bull. But yeah, it's super interesting. And yeah, I believe that it took longer to get the first Colosseum completion than it did for the first Theater of Blood completion or Tombs of Amaska completion or first Blood Torva. So I think from that, if that's your metric, then it was a success by that metric.
I think Theater Blood took a little bit longer because I remember watching that one, and I remember going to bed, waking up, and nobody completed it. And then we had another day of grinding. Whereas with the Coliseum, I woke up and then I kind of watched Wooks complete it, of course. Yeah. But then I found out he wasn't even number 1. He was number 2. Mm-hmm. So someone named Port Kazard had actually grinded it out first. But I think they maybe just make YouTube videos so nobody was watching them stream it, which was neat. So yeah, we saw it kind of completed after 24 hours or so. But what was funny is when Wooks did it, he figured out this method. The boss does all these crazy things. I'm not going to try to explain it, but stuff happens. It's very hard. People die. But Wooks figured out a way that you could run these 4 corners in a loop while doing damage, and you are able to basically dodge all of the attacks. And that was how he got the cape. And he made it look super easy, although way easier than it would actually be. It'd still be a struggle for all of us. But what was funny was Jagex went and hot fixed it because they were like, yeah, that's not what we wanted people to do. So they went and fixed it so you couldn't do what Wooks did after he completed it because they said it was just too easy. Like, no, we didn't think someone's going to figure that out.
That's awesome.
Which is really cool. Yeah. So yeah, it's very neat. If I had another complaint, I don't like to be a negative Nelly, but also like I feel like as a RuneScaper, I have to complain a little bit if I can when new updates come out. The Coliseum kind of doesn't look great. It looks okay. It doesn't look bad necessarily. But when you compare it to like the other piece of content we got in this game, like we're going to talk about in a minute, the Perilous Moons or Moons of Peril, whatever you want to call it, looks gorgeous. Every part of that content looks so good. You're like, wow, this is beautiful. Coliseum, not so much. It seemed like they had a smaller team working on it and way less time to really make it look spicy. You're in this big arena, this big Coliseum. It's very like Roman inspired, but there's nobody in the stands. Nobody's watching you do the content. People like no one, like NPCs can and other players can't. Nobody's there. So you're just kind of doing this Coliseum in front of no one except for the final boss. The final boss is sitting on a throne watching you. And that's actually like the one cinematic part. The boss looks at you, stands up from the throne, and jumps into the field once you completed it. That part's cool. But like even when the NPCs spawn in, it just kind of, they just pop into existence. I don't know why I was thinking this, but I kind of was expecting them to like walk through a door, like a gate, being like someone ushering out your next opponent,
That would be
kind of something that's a little bit more realistic.
You need a guy with a microphone being like, and our next contender.
Yeah. And then you need the boss there giving him the thumbs up or the thumbs down, kind of like his disapproval. So a little disappointed by some of the way things looked. I thought the armor pieces and the weapons and all that don't look very great either. The NPCs themselves, I think, do look cool, to be honest. But when we're talking about like just the aesthetics of the arena and the armor, I thought the armor, this being from this new like some of these are new best in slots and stuff. I thought they were going to look amazing, but many of them don't. Let me pull them up here. But I don't know. What do you think? Am I off base or how do you feel?
I think it's been pretty common that people have said that the Coliseum feels much less artistically interesting than the rest of Varlamore. And actually, kind of while you were talking, I had this kind of thing that was popping in my head, which is that I wonder if the reason why the Coliseum itself feels kind of bland is because this in-game content for these, HLC, where they're going to be pushing the limit of their abilities. And I wonder if the reason why it's very simple looking is because they know that people at that level are going to be much more worried about the performance of like their computer or the fight or whatever. And they didn't want to add anything extraneous that might cause any lag or any performance problems to these people who are worried about every single ping that they have. And if they added a crowd that was moving around, it would pull more on the computer's performance and the server. I do wonder, because I guess the only reason I have to say that is they mentioned in their most recent blog about what changes were coming, that they've seen that feedback that everybody is saying, why are there not people in the Coliseum? And they mentioned that they were going to try to do something about that, but performance always came first. Whereas something like Perilous Moons is kind of more of a mid-level encounter, the type of people who aren't going to notice a tick missing here and there, or a little bit of lag here and there. But I can see where these top end of people who, they breathe on the tick cycle, they know their ping. They have about 5 different, meters of plugins measuring every single ping. I can see how they would want to keep that as performance-based as possible. That would be my only defense of it. But I do, yes, it looks like a big...
Scale down theory is what you're saying.
Oh, no.
There's one NPC in there. They're but like the pretend it's 20,
It's 100. All connected. It's all connected.
Which makes sense. And when you also think about it from like a marketing standpoint, like so many more people are going to be looking at the doing Perilous Moons, that we want to make this look good, because we want these... it's going to have a wider variety of players are going to stumble across them, and we want to wow them. This looks awesome and this is fun. When you do the Coliseum, it's basically like the Inferno doers are going to be heading in there. So much less people are going to see it. So if it comes down to like, we have X amount of hours to allocate for our graphics team, it makes sense to be like 10% goes to here, or whatever the split was. Mm-hmm. Does make sense. The thing that I was a little bit surprised about was the armors, because a lot of these are best in slots and they don't look great. Let's quickly take a look at what some of this gear is. We have Dizana's Quiver, which is the new best in slot range cape. This is like the Inferno cape version for range. And this basically allows you to do what your assembler currently does by using them together, I'm pretty sure. But on top of that, your quiver can hold 2 different types of arrows. So you could bring whatever. You could bring bolts, and you could bring dragon arrows. You could bring your diamond bolts, whatever it is. So it allows you to bring 2. It just looks like something you would get from Castle Wars. It like doesn't really look that cool. If you saw pictures of it, you would probably be like, if you saw someone walking around with it, you're not going to be like, holy shit, that looks cool. You'd probably be like, I don't think you would notice it.
Yeah, last night at the GE, for the first time, I saw somebody with the Quiver Max Cape, and I would agree. It's kind of bland looking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. The next weapon you get from the Coliseum is called the Tonal Stick of Rallos. God damn it, these words. Listen to J-Mod pronounce it first. This is like a ninja star, and it's kind of cool. You can throw it, and when it's charged, it's going to do 2 hits when you do attack with it. Looks pretty neat. Kind of like it's a slower attack, but it does like a really big hit. But I think what people are going to be really impressed by the special attack. It's basically a Dragon Warhammer, but a ranged version of it. So you can throw it, and it's going to lower their defense by 10% of its magic level. A bit confusing, but if somebody has a really high magic level and you use it, it's going to really bring down their defense. So I don't know, maybe Corp, it might be good on it. I'm not too sure. But yeah, monsters that just have a high magic. But it looks kind of dumb. It's just a gray, it looks like a gray sun almost, with like a handle in the middle that's blue. And that's it. Nothing special. It doesn't really look impressive at all. If I saw somebody with that and I had no context of what it was, I probably wouldn't think too much of it. I'd probably just be like, yeah, whatever. It's a thing that exists.
Yeah, I would agree.
And I guess the last, maybe second last item to look at here is the Sunfire Fanatic armor set. This is a new best in slot prayer gear. It's an upgrade from the Proslite setup. this is another one that I'm looking at it and I'm like, this doesn't look best in slot, really. The chest and the legs look, they're okay, I guess. But the helmet is like this weird sun mask. It doesn't like look, it looks like something you would get from a holiday event or maybe a Clue Scroll cosmetic. I see this and it doesn't look like armor you would actually use in the game. It just looks like cosmetics. But, new best in slot prayer gear. And the last one were the Echo boots, which were these upgraded Guardian boots. And what it allowed you to do was when you take damage, it's going to recoil damage in a 3x3 square. So if you have a bunch of monsters surrounding you who are attacking you, it's going to, do 1 damage to a bunch of them every time you get hit. Just kind of neat. There's been some back and forth about how useful this really is because 1 damage doesn't seem like a lot. It's even actually worse than a recoil minus the AoE effect. But a lot of people are saying that 1 damage could be really, that 1 damage increase that's coming out of nowhere could be really big compared to the primordials.
Yeah, I think
those look all right.
I think those are pretty cool. I do actually like the concept a lot of items that have identical uses as other items. So, for example, if we were just going to say, oh, this is like a Ring of Suffering, except for the boot slot. I actually really like that concept just for the sake of then that gives options for, let's say, Zulrah is a big place where you need a recoil effect for the snakelings. And maybe you get better DPS from having a good ring in your ring slot, like an archer. Like let's say you get better DPS from an archer's ring and the Echo boots as opposed to a Ring of Suffering and Pegasian boots or something. And I think that actually opens up a ton of reward space to have these like identical effects in different armor slots that could really add to some interesting like DPS combinations that of course other people would figure out and tell me what to wear. But yeah, that would be the only kind of use for that. But once again, I'm not running the calculations. And if those people who are running the calculations are saying these are pretty much useless everywhere, then I'll take their word for it. And maybe it needs a buff or some tweaking. But I do love that idea that, yeah, it's the same as a Ring of Suffering, essentially, or a Ring of Recoil. But there's going to be times where you're going to want your boots more than you're going to want your ring. But there's going to be other times where you're going to want your ring more than you're going to want your boots.
Yeah, it is neat. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I agree. I don't think it's a bad thing. I'm not sure. But I think the Echo boots are kind of cool. It's not something I would love to get. They do look neat. I think I like AoE damage. I think I like things that do AoE damage. I was super into like the Venator bow when they were releasing it and stuff. That shot a arrow, but then it shot 2 extra arrows to anyone around you. I kind of like that sort of that mechanic.
Yeah, I really feel like within a year, a lot of these minor complaints are going to be kind of ironed out. Whether it's, they have an entire. I have a very strong memory of our last recording being on the wiki page for the changes in graphical updates that you just barely mentioned it on something. And I went to the article for it and I was just enthralled by it, like the entire recording, because it's so interesting how they've made these minor tweaks or huge major tweaks to the way things look based on what people like or don't like. And so maybe a year from now, all these things will look completely different. I honestly kind of think they will, because that Sunfire Fanatic armor, it does look kind of goofy, and I can see it changing. Honestly, if they just did the whole, I can't remember if it's actually an item in the game or not, but the Sunfire Warrior armor that's basically ripped straight out of Dark Souls. If that was, and that maybe that was the original pitch for it, I can't remember, but that armor looks fine. It looks better than this, and so if that was what it was, then I'll be okay with that. But
yeah, that's fair.
I think, hopefully it'll get tweaked over time.
2 things I really like about the Coliseum as well is the loot system and this like wave progression system. So I haven't personally had a chance to do it, but just from like the perspective of someone outside looking in, looks cool. So every time you complete a wave, you get to choose between 3 options that are either going to supply debuffs or buffs. So it's things where it's like you might have this orb that travels around the room and does damage, or it might be like maybe you take more damage. I don't really know all of them, but you get these 3 options, and they change. They're completely random, apparently, so that every run's supposed to feel a little bit different. I really like roguelite games, especially now that I have a kid and I don't always have a chance to jump on a video game for like a couple hours. Roguelite lets me jump in and play for 30 minutes, and they have so many of those mechanics where it's like every run feels a bit different because there's different buffs you're getting and different weapons and different attacks and different challenges you're facing. Everything's different every time. So this adds that element. I've heard people say it's not achieving that. Like, it doesn't make it feel like things are really different. It just makes it feel things either suck or they suck less than your last run. But again, we love to complain as RuneScape players, so take that with a grain of salt. I love the idea of you picking between these different options. Trey, how do you feel about systems like that?
I think the only way it's going to be interesting is if there's applications for the different. I think are we calling them invocations? I don't know if they're.
I have no idea.
Well, I'll call them invocations. If there's different applications for different invocations, would be the only way that I think it works. So let's say that there's certain invocations that make you take more damage, but you can do things faster. That would be useful for like a speed run. And then there's ones that make maybe. I think the way it works is there are ones that give you more glory, give you more reward. So if you're in it for running GP, then you could take those ones. Or if there's ones that are for your first completion, you take the easiest ones. Because, at the end of the day, if there is a meta, it will be found and it will be used by 99% of people. So if there are just specifically one run of invocations, and I realize that they change every time, so that is something you'd have to change on the fly. But so maybe it's more what I'm saying is if there's invocations that are never used by anybody, that it's a missed opportunity. But if they can balance it so that there's different applications for different people for what they're going for on their run, then that's really cool.
Yeah, I totally agree. It defeats the purpose if you fall into this meta where you know that, like, I don't know, if you only had like 10 to choose from, like, that's not enough. You're gonna know, okay, you choose these 3 when they pop up every time. So I could totally see that. And the other thing that I really like is, I mentioned the loot system. So when you complete a raid, you get loot. In every raid, you get more and more loot added onto it. But what's really neat is when you're choosing your buffs or debuffs, it tells you what reward you're going to get if you complete the next wave. So if you're going to get a unique, you're going to see it. You're going to see that it's coming up in the next wave when you have to complete it. Same with the pet. It's going to tell you the pet is coming if you complete the next wave. And I love that because that is going to cause people to lose 100% because of your nerves. Mm-hmm. But I just love the idea of how exciting that would feel to be doing it and knowing you're not just completing the raid, you're not just completing the content, but there's a pet waiting for you if you do.
Yeah, I saw a screenshot on Reddit that was, I think they said fuck my life. And it was basically the next wave was going to have like an echo crystal. So a very valuable item, and their inventory was completely empty of supplies. And so obviously they couldn't, you can't go, you're going to die if you try to run that. But just that feeling of, so much of PVM, almost 100% of PVM boils down to risk versus reward. And so that putting that risk versus reward right in your face where you can increase the risk with your invocations and you see the reward. I think it's a really cool idea from a player standpoint. I hate it because you're seeing, oh man, I want to go for this so bad because I see what I'm getting and I know I can't.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in the long run, that's a great system.
It's very cool. I think it's really neat. Trey, we got a few more things to talk about here. So, Let's move on to, I guess, let's talk about the Perilous Moons, the next piece of PVM content that's quite huge. People are comparing it to Barrows, mostly because You kill a set number of bosses, and then you go loot a chest and you get armor. You have a chance at getting armor corresponding to each boss you've completed. Most of the time, you're going to be doing all 3 bosses. But if you wanted to do just one, you could just do just one. But you're doing this PVM content, and it's kind of like your own content. Barrows, you summon this Barrows brother when you go loot the chest. Everyone gets their own version of the brother. This works a little bit differently. You walk into a boss room and everyone's killing the same boss, but you have your own unique health bar. So the bosses are just running in these different cycles. It's basically going to have an attack phase, and then it's going to have a non-attack phase, or something else is happening. Maybe you have to dodge stuff, or maybe you have to go do something else. And then it goes back to an attack phase, and then it goes to another dodge or do something phase, and then it goes back to attack phase again. So it's constantly bouncing between those. And whenever you fill up the health bar, you just get sucked out of the room. And there's 3 different bosses. You get a blood moon looking boss, a lunar moon looking boss, and an eclipse moon looking boss, something like that. I forget what they're called. But it's really neat. It looks beautiful. The dungeon feels like a dungeon. I get lost in it so often. I've done it 30 runs now, and I still get lost. Not sure what room I need to go into. It's very self-contained. So you need health, or you need food, you need potions. It's all made within the dungeon itself. Of course, you can bring some in if you need. Yeah, and then you loot the chest. You get some cool. There's 3 new armor sets with weapons, which are pretty neat. But yeah, Trey, what are your thoughts on the Moons of Peril?
I think overall 10 out of 10. First off, it's awesome. I think it kind of suffers, in my opinion, from the comparison to Barrows, just because I think it's so different. Like, I can see how it might have been the design pitch, within Jagex, of saying, what if we did something similar to Barrows? And then as it grew, they, broke down, and the concept changed, as it does when you're developing something, into something that I don't think is anything like Barrows at all. I mean, by that logic, you could call something like Corrupted Gauntlet like Barrows, because you kill a boss and then there's a chest, or any raid,
Yeah.
I get that it's for mid-levels, and I get that there's multiple bosses. So that's where the comparison ends.
I think it's like inspiration. They have similar concepts.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting things that they did with this. The idea that you're completely self-contained, and you can get a combat potion, you can get a prayer potion all in one, you can get food, and you can stay there forever. Is the continuing degradation of the game, catering to Iron Man. The game is ruined. Mm-hmm. And then you have this really unique mechanic that we've never seen before, that I hope they can implement into every piece of future content that of this kind of similar ilk. Would be this idea that you go in and the boss has a health bar that's only for you. So it's a solo boss, but you're killing it in the same room as other people. So it feels like group content, but you are responsible for killing the boss. You can't just get carried. It's still a solo boss, but you feel like it's group content. And that balance is so cool.
It is cool.
I was joking about catering to Iron Man, but this actually does cater to Iron Man very well, because Iron Man can't do God Wars Dungeon with groups. That sucks. Like, they can't even come in the room and get anything.
No.
And this is a way to kind of sidestep that. You have your friends that can be doing the same content as you, and you can hang out with your Iron Man friends, and they're having just as much of a chance of getting these uniques as you. And it's not like something like Nex, where the MVP has a higher chance of reward, and you have you're not suffering by the guy with Torva and Scythe coming in and stealing the kill from you every time, but you could still do it with someone who has a Torva and Scythe and have a good time. So that mechanic is so cool. And I would like if they could go back to older content, and add that into some of the older content to make it feel more like a group activity, but still solo. And so that part of it is super cool as well. And we've kind of hammered it home, but it bears hammering home. The look of everything is incredible.
Oh, it looks amazing.
Yeah.
And the armors, I think, look pretty cool as well. The armors, I think, are like kind of underrated, to be honest. I didn't hear a whole lot about it, but they look awesome. And I love this sort of stuff. I think we're going to see some cool niches for each of them. And PvP, gosh, when we get a nice group together for PvP in the clan, when you get enough numbers, you can start trying out wacky things. We have someone that we like to run with, and they're always like, I want to bring out full DH and just DH bomb people deep wildy. And if with a big group, you're like, that's totally fine. There's 10 of us here. We got you. And all the other roles are filled. We got TBers, we got barragers, we have rangers. We're good. Do whatever you want. And I love that this gear is going to it makes me want to try some of this stuff. So you have the Blood Moon armor, and it gives you these 2 weapons that are called the Mukahuitil. I can't say it. I don't know even why I tried. People call it the maracas. You get to dual wield these maracas, and they're kind of cool. They're like these paddles with these like obsidian stones baked into the side of them. It's like a real weapon. And it has this special effect when you have a full outfit on. So this is another similarity to Barrows. So this is why people call it a 2.0 Barrows. But
good point. Yeah.
But it does get confusing because it's like, well, this feels nothing like it. But what's really cool is this armor set. First off, the weapons do 2 hit splats. It does what we wish Torg hammers would do, but they don't. But Torgs don't. When you have the full set, you have a 33% chance to attack 1 tick sooner when you successfully hit. So if you do hit, you might come in with a quicker ba-bam attack. I haven't looked too much into these. I haven't really experimented with these yet. I wonder if that is stackable. Like imagine that 33% keeps stacking. You're like, next thing you know, you're just like, you're just going off on them because you just keep getting lucky with the RNG. But yeah, your attacks speed up after the second hit at times. Very neat. The Blue Moon armor. So that's like your melee armor. It's melee. Blue Moon armor is like a melee mage armor because when you get the full set, and the weapon is this spear. It's a Blue Moon spear, it's called. When you're wearing the full set, when you cast binding spells, you have an 50% chance at snaring them. Whereas like when you look at some of the spells have like a 20% chance on other spell books. So with this Blue Moon armor, when you have the full set, it has a 20% chance that when you cast a binding spell, that you will automatically follow it up with a melee attack instantly. So you can stack 2 hits. You get a barrage in, you can instantly stab them with your spear. That's kind of cool. It has this extra level of effect where on the Arceus spellbook, you have a bunch of these grass spells. It does like a bit of damage. It's kind of like Ice Barrage, but it does less damage and it only focuses on one person and it actually freezes them for a smaller amount of time. So it's not great. It's like a shittier version of Ice Barrage. But when you have the full Blue Moon armor on, it goes from a 20% chance at snaring them to a 50% chance. Still not as good as Barrage because Barrage will snare them if it hits them. This one's a 50% chance, but it's kind of cool. You might have a little bit more uses there. But I love the idea that like you could wear this PvPing and boom, freeze them and you're going to follow it up with stabbing them in the gut with your spear. That's really cool. The last armor is called the Eclipse Moon armor. And this is your melee range. So you get your range weapon, which is this Addle, which is like this real world. It's like this, I don't know what you'd call it, like a thing of wood that you would use it to help you throw a spear. So you kind of put the spear or whatever it is into that holder, and then it just allows you to get a little extra leverage, I guess, a little extra power when you're tossing it. And this one is based off of your melee armor. So we saw someone in the clan that was testing it out at Tob wearing full Torva with the Addle, which is kind of funny. They're bringing it at Tob, so they don't have to bring anything else. They can just bring this one weapon and it would act as your ranged weapon completely. But it has this really cool set effect. So when you have the full set on, every time you hit someone, you have a 20% chance at inflicting a burn effect, which is this new damage over time. It's going to do 1 damage every 4 ticks. But you can stack it up 5 times. So they're taking 4 damage They're basically taking 1 damage every tick or 4 damage every 4 ticks. And this lasts for 40 ticks, it looks like. But what's kind of cool is it has a special attack that when you use it, it's going to consume every burning dot you have, every burning damage over time effect. And it's going to instantly apply all the damage that those were going to do over the 40 ticks. It's going to do it instantly. So you can bring it out there and just boom, boom, like bring it PvPing, use it, stack up as many burns as you can, and then boom, use the special attack, and you could do a lot of damage depending on how quickly you get those stacks going. Seems very neat. What are your thoughts on these armors?
No, I think they're cool. Once again, I'm kind of in a weird spot. I have my main account is kind of far past the point where, maybe PvP would be maybe the only use I would have for them. And my budding Iron Man is not high enough level quite yet. So I will be curious once my Iron gets a high enough level to how those can benefit me. But they seem to be really useful. And the other thing, in our the Lost recording, we went on a pretty lengthy rant about kind of railroading in these newer bosses and how there's a very specific way to do them. And, hindsight benefits us in this situation because since we were specifically ranting about how I was ranting about how the Eclipse boss has this phase where you go into it and it gets left at 1 hit point and you can't finish it off. You have to go through the special. And it's come out since then that if you have one of these pieces of equipment from this from this, content, I can't remember which one it is, but the one that comes from the Eclipse boss, it will prevent that from happening. So that was a design choice to actually benefit you from having the weapon that comes from this content. So that's a cool idea. And
that's so annoying. I've been doing this, and how did I not know that? I hate when Jagex does this, where they're like, by the way, there's a super secret mechanic that like you can only find out by going on the wiki.
Yeah.
It happens. So what was the other one that had happened where it's like, oh, did you know this? And I was like, no. It was the Tombs of Amasket when you're doing the Baba Monkey Room. Apparently, if you venom the shamans, they'll stop spawning little dudes. How the fuck am I supposed to know that? How am I supposed to know that? Like, there's nothing in the game that tells me that.
I'm just learning that right now. I have no idea.
Yeah, like there's no way you would know that because it's just on the wiki. You gotta be wikiing. But then things get added. So it's like, this is just, guys, if you really want to be the best as possible at this game, make sure you read every Wikipedia page like once a week because you never know what's gonna get added to it. This new like Easter egg stuff.
Yeah, it's frustrating, and it's got to be weird for them knowing that everything they do is going to be put on the wiki. And so in a sense, if it was between doing something that only the developer of the game can do or something that someone on the wiki could do later, I could see how they maybe prioritize not having those explanations. But it is a real problem in this game. I mean, the fact that half of the bosses in the game calculate their damage before you see the animation, and half of them calculate the damage when it hits you. And there's no way of knowing that without having it happen to you or having the wiki tell you, I think is a problem. And that extends to a ton of other things. The difference between like the Colosseum mechanics and the Inferno mechanics are night and day just because of when they're developed. And the game is so interesting and so different to every other game because all these different boss encounters are all products of their time and the products of what Jagex their mindset was at the time. Whether, Tombs of Amasket was kind of the big, like the explosion of the calculating damage on a hit. And I think everything besides Akka in that fight calculates its damage on hit, whereas compared to like the other raids or once again Inferno or a lot of these other things, it's not how that works. And but then you have something like Jad where the damage is calculated kind of in the middle between when the animation starts because you have to see it to react to it, but it's calculated before it hits you. And those things, I see the argument for that. It's rewarding people who can see that and figure it out, and it feels good. And something like you're talking about Bloodborne is exactly the same way. It doesn't tell you shit, but I Yeah, I completely see the frustration, and I wish there was. I don't want there to be consistency. I think it's great that there's those two different types of ways to pray against things, and it adds complete different and complex choices to how you handle these bosses. But just little things in the chat box of even just saying like, oh, you like a way of thematically saying, oh, you prayed too late on this, would be interesting. Like your prayer. I don't know how they would say in the chat, but your damage slips through your prayer as it goes up too slowly or something would be a way for, people who are less intuitive with these kind of things to figure that out.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I think of a scaling joke. No, I agree. And they do that sometimes. You're like, oh, it's perfect. Like the eclipse. There's this phase you're talking about. They get stuck at 1 HP, but you have to face the boss. They kind of spawn around the room really fast, and you got to face them every single time. If you're facing them, you'll hit them back with damage, and they won't hurt you. If you're not facing them, they'll hurt you. There's this. It's slow enough that sometimes you think you did it fast enough, but you didn't. But you have to think in your chat box. It'll say you faced the boss. You were able. You saw the attack coming, and you deflected it and counterattacked. It says something like that. And if you don't, it says it caught you off guard, something like that. And you're like, oh, okay, I wasn't quick enough. That is obvious. But yeah, I totally agree. It can be a bit confusing, and it's part of the I don't know, rougher part of the struggle, I think, when it comes to getting a grasp of this game.
Right.
So we have a couple more things to get through, and maybe we'll do like an honorable mentions at the end. I think we're going to have to end the episode right after we get through the Varlamore updates, because I do have to run very, very soon. But I didn't want to end it without talking about one of I was going to say the unsung hero of the release, but a lot of people love this update. It's not unsung at all. It's the Hunting Guild. We got a Hunting Guild, an update to the Hunter skill. And what's really cool is with it, we got this new rumors system, which is basically Slayer, but it's if Slayer and farming contracts had a baby, maybe it could be like the Hunter rumors, because you talk to this person, they go, I want you to go hunt. Actually, what they say is like, we think there's this like special sunfire moth living amongst the moth population. Go catch it. You can tell by its wing. So you go to the moths, you catch them, you keep catching them nonstop until eventually RNG rewards you with this item that pops in your inventory. It'll be like the moth wing. Great. Or if you're hunting antelopes, it'll be an antelope hoof. And it's all RNG, but then you bring it in, you get a bag of rewards, which is like a couple 100K sometimes. There's some few uniques you can get from it, and you get a nice bit of experience. This has been fun. I love this piece of content. I do it a lot. There's a few evenings I jumped on, and I'm like, what do I want to do? I'm going to keep doing hunting contracts. I'm going to get 99 hunting now because of this, because I enjoy it so much. What are your thoughts on it though? Have you had a chance to do it? I know you're maxed, and I should ask, does maxing affect your enjoyment of things like this?
Yeah, I mean, refer to our upcoming episode about maxing. No,
a weird one. It'd be really weird. Not gonna make sense.
No, I'm a fan of backdoor artisan. I wanted artisan in the game, and I still want artisan in the game. And I think that the way that they're approaching this, if this really is backdoor artisan, like I'm predicting, where they're going to continue to do this for every skill, I will be the number one champion of it. I was brainstorming the other day about how they could, because I think the idea of, instead of a single skill where it's like, go do this, the idea of having a baked in mechanic for that is like thematically tied to each of the individual skills, I think would be so cool. Like I was, just one example, I was thinking for fishing, it would be really cool if it was like you went to these people who said, hey, like Catherby, well, that's a bad example, but Catherby is, we're supplying food to them and they need, 50 trout. You can choose to cook them or not. You'll get more rewards if you do cook them, similar to like Temperos. But like you're like you get in with these people who are supplying food to these different cities, and that would be a way of having like backdoor artisan for fishing, and having something like that thematically tied with every skill, similar to how the Hunting Guild is. I think would be so cool. But that's all a long-winded way of saying I really love it. I love the Hunter Guild itself, the way it looks, the way it feels very Hunter Guildy. And the best thing about the entire rumor system is it's highlighting how awful Hunter is. And Jagex is hearing that loud and clear. I mean, I think the majority of the first week tweaks were to the way that things in Hunter work that just have been completely covered in dust because there's been like one meta for Hunter, and it's all based around getting through this, awful skill as fast as possible and getting to the point where you can do like Black Chins or Herbivore where you can maybe get some profit from it. But yeah, all of the like the Kebits and the Salamanders and the Red Chinchampas are going to get some love because now there's thousands of people doing them, and these are mechanics that have been baked in the game from like 2008. So I really am excited for some. There's no three words in this game I love more than quality of life, and I hope that Hunter gets this huge quality of life rework. I mean, I would love to see Hunter get a much different rework, much bigger rework to having completely new methods and making the methods useful. And I mean, like, yeah, that the meta of getting these like furs and these salamanders and these different meats. And I mean, I'm not an Iron Man. I don't think Iron Man even have any use for those items. So I think pretty much 99% of people drop all that stuff immediately. And it would be so cool if those items had uses. I mean, one of the pitches was for the new Varlamore furs from the hunter animals in Varlamore to be used to repair the armor, because the armor degrades similar to Barrow's armor. Instead of taking it to Bob and Lumbridge or doing it at your house with GP to be able to repair them using furs. I think that's an ingenious idea and feels so thematic. And just over time, I think, and as these problems keep getting highlighted, I think more and more Hunter will become a better skill, I hope. But as it stands, as it is right now in the game, I think it's really great. You go to do red salamanders, which sucks, but you only have to do it for between like 5 minutes and an hour. The timing of things is really inconsistent, and I know they're kind of looking into that and tweaking that as well. It is weird to teleport all the way, get set up, and catch it on your first one, but
I like that though. It keeps you guessing. It's like, I don't know when it's going to happen, but it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I like the RNG part of it, but yeah, it's super cool. I'm glad. I think we're going to see a lot more of this artisan features popping into these. Artisan was a skill they pitched where it was like Slayer, but for skilling. So you'd talk to this dude and he'd be like, I need 100 oak longbows that you need to make. And
right. Well, yeah, I do think that the concept of him saying he wants 100 oak longbows and you go back to the same master and then he wants you to catch 50 swordfish, I can see how that would not be fun to do because you're switching between all these different skills. But the idea of you pick a skill that you're gonna go for. Let's say you're going for base 70s for Song of the Elves, and you pick like, I'm gonna go for woodcutting, and doing some woodcutting and unlocking the guild. I think for probably at least half the skills, unlocking the guild means nothing for you. And the idea of unlocking the guild, which means that would unlock that particular artisan facet, and being able to use that to do all of the methods. I think one thing that people talk a lot about with Iron Man that they like so much is it forces you to do all of the different content in the game. You can't skip things based on, gold or whatever's most efficient. You have to do pretty much everything to get all the different things in the game. And the cool thing about this like kind of artisan / slayer / the hunter rumor concept is that you might do something that is very useless, like catching red salamanders, but you're getting a buff on your XP that would pull it up to the level of doing whatever the meta is. And you're also getting these unique rewards. And there's a pet chance, which is, always a bonus.
Totally. So it's all very neat. And okay, so we're coming close to time. Let me just, if you don't mind, let me shotgun fire or machine gun fire, probably better to say, some of the honorable mentions being they added this new thieving method where you can pickpocket these wealthy people living in the city. These urchins, these kids will distract them for you so you can just keep pickpocketing them. It adds a little bit of an AFK method to it because it only lasts like 15 seconds maybe, but during that time you don't have to do anything but pickpocket once and you will keep doing it. You at times will get these random keys. You can then break into people's houses, and it does add another element of like AFKing for thieving. But the whole experience of like stumbling across these wealthy citizens, getting these keys, breaking into their house, stealing their jewelry, it's all very cool. Do you get rewarded? Like, is there anything cool that comes from it? Not really. You get some experience. That's pretty much it. Maybe some GP. That's about it though. Not too bad. We also got this bone fragment mining thing where you can like get these bone fragments and then you can then use them to get prayer experience. So that seems nice. A lot of people are saying this is great for Iron Man. And then finally, last but not least, I haven't done this yet myself, and I was ashamed to say it. I was going to do it this weekend, but I got Warhammer 40K and I forgot to do it. It is this quest called The Riveting Tale of a Lily Pad Labor Dispute. People are saying this is an awesome quest. It is so much fun and it's so silly. Trey, do you agree or do you disagree?
No, this is my favorite meaningless quest in the game. Maybe next to one small favor, but at least this one is bearable to actually do. But as far as the funny component of it, it's awesome. I love that we have Grandmaster quests about saving the world and these quests about doing this little menial, like kind of breaking up an argument kind of quest. And it's the most ridiculous thing ever. I don't know if I've ever actually laughed out loud at the storyline of a quest like I did with this one. Something just really caught me off guard. One of the things that happened and made me laugh. And yeah, I was getting the feeling that we were kind of getting away from those. It felt like every quest we were getting, because of the resources and because to try to get these quests made and have people do them, it felt like they were only wanting to release Grandmaster quests or quests leading up to Grandmaster quests. But to get something as meaningless as like a sheep shearer, honestly, I thought was awesome. But this was way more interesting than sheep shearer. It's a fun, dumb quest, and there's nothing to it more than that. But awesome. I love it. It feels so good to have something that's just enjoyable. Yeah.
I've heard a lot of people say the same thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm looking forward to trying it, and hopefully that happens sooner than later. I don't think there's anything else to mention I've forgotten about, but guys, let us know what you thought. We're just going to close it out here. Sorry to the Patreoners, but we got to rush to wrap this bad boy up. We have a clan in game, Wild is the name. Discord.gg/The Wilderness. If you'd like to join our Discord server, our podcast, our email is thewildernesspodcast@gmail.com. And yeah, we have a I wanted to just tee up the SpeakPipe link, and then I just started saying everything. But we have a SpeakPipe link. You can find it in the description. Call in. Let us know what you thought about Varlamore. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like. Do you agree with what we said? Do you disagree with what we said? Yeah, let us know. Definitely curious to hear. In our song of the week, let's pull it from the Coliseum. Are you not entertained? Is the song reference to the 2000s film Gladiator. Trey, any closing thoughts?
No.
Awesome. Sorry for that abrupt ending. Things got a little chaotic here the last few minutes, but thanks all for listening. Hope you enjoyed it.
Bye.